Welcome to the Yamas and Niyamas. My name is Megha, Nancy Buttenheim. I'm Chief Joy Officer of Let Your Yoga Dance. And also, I'm a longtime faculty member and teacher trainer at Kripalu Center. And over these decades of being part of Kripalu, I have loved and practiced and taught the Yamas and Niyamas, which are the ancient codes of yogic conduct. And they're a lot of fun to play with. And tonight I'm going to be working with each one of these 10 practices. And hopefully at the end of this talk, you might have one of the Yamas and Niyamas to practice on your own, either for a week or a month, or sometimes there are 10 of them. So sometimes I take a whole year and do one a month, and that almost makes the year. So when I first learned about the Yamas and Niyamas, I was interested to discover that Swami Kripalu, for whom Kripalu Center was named, was a great lover of the Yamas and Niyamas. And he taught that they are like a garland. So when I teach you each one of the 10 practices, you can imagine that they're like leaves on a garland. And so if you pick one of the petals of the garland, the whole garland comes along with you. And that's why I'm going to invite you to just really focus on one. After you learn all 10 of them, then choose just one so you dig the deep well. And when you practice one yama or niyama, they all come along for the ride. So I'm going to share with you now a little excerpt from the Let Your Yoga Dance Teacher Training Manual about these practices. So as Swami Kripalu said, by living these codes of conduct to the best of our ability, we access greater energy. Our minds become more direct, focused, flexible. Our energy begins to direct itself internally. As energy rises within, the body and mind are purified at higher levels of consciousness. Yoga is thousands and thousands of years old. And Yogi Patanjali was the first one who actually started writing it down. It was originally an auditory practice taught by male guru to male disciple, and it just went down and down and down that way. So Patanjali started codifying the practice, and he discovered that it was really an eightfold path. And the yamas and niyamas are the first two rungs of this ladder of yoga. In our culture nowadays, yoga is so mainstream, and many people think of yoga as simply the postures. That's not true. That they are actually, the postures are the third part of this eight-runged ladder of yoga. The yamas and niyamas are the beginning. As our Babaji, Swami Kripalu, would say, the yamas and niyamas are the alpha and the omega. So practicing the yamas and niyamas is really a choice, and you have to realize that if you've already got a practice that you're doing, you don't want to, laden yourself with too many. But as I said, it can be a great deal of fun to focus on each one of these practices and then see where they go in your life. So I'm going to read another little excerpt from the Teacher Training Manual, and it says, by choosing one yama or niyama, you may enhance your yoga practice as well as your daily life. You focus on one day each week, each month. While practicing yoga or Let Your Yoga Dance or meditation, you can repeat the name of your yama or niyama. When a difficult situation arises during the day, you can recall your practice using the word as a mantra, repeating the name over and over again. This is not only soothing for the mind, but it sends a new, healthy affirmation into your nervous system. So with that, I'm going to actually go through each one of these 10 practices and just talk a little bit about how they really resonate in our daily life. You know all of them already, you just haven't really seen the sequence perhaps. So let's see where we go. We're going to begin with the yamas. A yama is a restraint. It's mastery or control. If you have thought of the word pranayama, the science of the breath, the word yama is contained in the word pranayama. Prana is our life force. Yama is restraint, control, or mastery. So feel free right now to close your eyes and begin to take some long, deep breaths through the nostrils. We're coming into the complete yogic breath, inhaling into belly, middle, upper chest, through the nostrils, exhale from the top, middle, back down to the belly. And as you breathe in this way, you are actually controlling your life force. You're creating a bit of a restraint. Usually when we breathe, we're not even thinking about breathing. But now we get slow, we get calmer, we breathe in, hold it at the top, exhale, back down. This is a pranayama. We're actually controlling our life force. And when we breathe in this way, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response in the body. So having a restraint or a mastery or a control can be a really excellent thing to do. So this yama practice is all about character building restraints, and we start with ahimsa. Can you just say that over and over? Ahimsa, ahimsa. In Sanskrit, the word himsa means violence. And when you put the letter A in front of that word himsa, A means not that. So when you put A with himsa, ahimsa, you get non-violence. And we also like to say the word compassion for ahimsa. So I'm going to ask you to think about all of these 10 practices from your own perspective, not looking out at the world, all the problems we have in the world, how violent everything is, politics, this and that. Don't go outside, go inside and look at your own mind. And what kind of violent thoughts do you have in a day? I'm going to give you some examples that either are in my life or some of my students and friends' lives. Let's see, road rage. Do you ever get mad when you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off, or something isn't right and there's a big traffic jam and you're late for work? Sometimes can get all upset and very, very angry, violent even. Or what about violent, unkind thoughts to yourself? Ever go into a yoga class or a Let Your Yoga Dance class and somebody looks like they're some Vogue model and there's jealousy and upset? So there's all kinds of ways that in our own lives we can create violence against ourselves or others. And I'm not even talking about the obvious things about killing, but just violent thoughts. So if you have a habit of really being unkind to yourself, or you have a really strong critic that's just incessant, I'd recommend ahimsa as a practice for you. And just saying that word, I think it feels like silk to say ahimsa, ahimsa. And you could, I've done it millions of times, walk down the road, walk down a path, and just say to yourself, ahimsa, a meditation walk, and see where you go with that. Now we move on to satya. You want to say that a little bit? Satya. It looks like it might be satya, but it's actually satya. Satya is the practice of truth. truth-seeking, learning how we say our truth or perhaps hold back from our truth. There's a lovely expression, a yogi is someone who can bear the consequences of who she truly is. Really, being our authentic self can sometimes be dangerous. So, we have to measure, sometimes is it really dangerous to speak our truth and maybe we need to be quiet? Or think about meetings. You're in a business that might be not such an easy business, and you might be getting fired if you speak your truth too much. But then on the other hand, what happens if you need to fire someone? And you kindly as you can, you tell them the truth, that this really isn't working, this relationship isn't working, and we're gonna have to let you go. And unfortunately, we can't really be responsible for the other's reaction. They might blow up in our face, even if our intention has been really clear and kind. And that's really important when we're thinking about this practice of satya, telling the truth with ahimsa, with compassion. So if we start pounding a mean truth at somebody and say, oh, you were horrible, you suck, you're this, you're that, or the other, that really is not practicing the yama of satya. Because remember, as Swami Kripalu taught, these wonderful practices are like a garland. So if you're practicing satya, truth, you're also practicing ahimsa, compassion. What about white lies? I mean, I'm sure all of us at one time or another, or 20,000 times, have told little white lies so we don't hurt somebody's feelings. It's just important to look, to shine the flashlight on our behavior. Sometimes we might have to not tell the truth. I will give you an example. When my mom had dementia and Daddy died a little bit before her, I noticed that she would forget that. And I didn't want her to re-grieve over and over and over by her saying, where's your dad? And to say again and again, he died. I think that's completely unkind. So it might be, he's not here right now. He's down the hall, or something like that, just to make life more kind for another. So see how that works for you. If satya is a practice that sizzles in your mind's eye, or you'd like to really explore your truth-telling and your silence and withholding, then practice it. So we have ahimsa and satya. The third yama is ashteya. Can you say that with me? Ashteya. Ashteya. Ashteya means non-stealing. And when we think about stealing, of course, obviously, we should not be taking what does not belong to us. But let's go a little deeper with that word, non-stealing. What are some ways that we might steal? The first thing I think about, of course, because I am a deep and dear lover of Mother Earth Gaia, I think of the ways that human beings steal from the Earth's resources. And if that's something that is near and dear to your heart, then if you practice Ashteya, you might spend a little time thinking, okay, what are some things I can do tomorrow that make Mother Earth Gaia a little happier? I'm going to the bank tomorrow, so why don't I ride my bike instead of driving my car? It'll take probably an hour both ways, but hey, if I've got the time, why not? And I won't use any fossil fuel, and that will be a nice little gift for her. Sometimes we steal other people's ideas and we don't give credit where credit is due. They say there's nothing new under the sun, but still, sometimes people have a whoppingly good idea, and then I've noticed in meetings that somebody else, takes that idea and pretends it's theirs. For me, I will say sometimes I steal from my nervous system by staying up too late and not letting myself have deep rest. Eating, drinking, what are your vices? And I'm not saying eating is a vice, we all have to eat, but if we overindulge, we're stealing from ourselves. So this is a really, really important practice. And if you find that you kind of have little weaselly ways of, stealing even from yourself, this is a great practice. People who are often late, oftentimes they're stealing other people's time. Do you know any kind of vampires that steal energy? I've been guilty of both. I'm not guilty of being at the mercy of folks, but I remember when I was a kid, I would kind of want to be around certain people all the time and sort of stealing their energy. And now when I notice it happening to me, I need to take a breath and maybe have a better boundary with that person. So it's a really, really interesting practice. Ashteya, non-stealing. The fourth yama is called Brahma Chharia. That's a little hard to pronounce. Brahma Chharia. Brahma Chharia. Brahma Chharia is all about having respect for your own energy. Moderation in all things. That's not so easy, especially in our culture. And I'm going to tell a funny ashram story. I lived at Kripalu Center when it was an ashram for 12 long years. And Brahmacharya was considered then, and actually if you go to India, you will learn that the definition of Brahmacharya is more about celibacy. And so we were a celibate ashram, and people in their 20s and 30s having celibacy enforced upon them could create a little havoc. And so I did notice when I was a guest at Kripalu, not very long, I moved in pretty soon afterwards because I thought it was quite compelling to have a 24/7 spiritual lifestyle. But I noticed that on Wednesday nights, it was dessert night. And then on Thursday, it was called the Day of the Guru, where everybody would fast on brown rice and eat their little kernels of rice. But dessert night was the night before. And when I was a guest, I watched the resident yogis of Kripalu stampede in to get to that dessert tray platter, and there was a lot of it. So they would really eat and eat and eat, and then the next day they would fast. And I used to think, if you don't have a food issue when you come as a guest to Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in the ashram, you're certainly going to get one eventually. So Brahmacharya, I don't think, is a practice of eating like a pig on a Wednesday night and then starving yourself the next day. So there were a lot of ways that we practiced the yamas and niyamas incorrectly, but here I am alive to tell the tale. So how do we practice being moderate? And it's not easy. Again, our culture doesn't want us to be moderate. Our culture wants us to buy and consume and buy and buy and eat a lot of sugar, right? So if you have an issue with one of these vices, like overeating, over drinking, pill popping. I mean, look at our opioid crisis. I mean, it's very, very serious. Brahmacharya could be something for you to practice. Also, if you are really just desperately seeking a relationship, that's all that is on your brain, rather than looking at your relationship with yourself and the world around you, you might just try it. Just practice, even if it's just for a day, or one breath, one step at a time. Very compelling practice. Brahmacharya, moderation, energy management, respecting your energy. Aparigraha means non-possessiveness, non-attachment. And you might close your eyes a moment and think about all the things in your life that you would put the word my in front of. For example, I would say my home, my practice, my work, my dog, my dharma path, my body, my clothes, my car, my siblings, my family. So there's a lot of my. And I was about to say my trees outside my home. And then I didn't say that because I thought, no, 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 you're the steward for those trees. You do not own those trees. And actually, do I own anything that I put that word my in front of? Like many of you have children or spouses. Are those children truly yours? You know, they are their own unique individual self, and you were given the gift of caring for them and loving them and helping them be the best human they can be. So it's a really interesting thing with aparigraha to look at our attachments. Now, many of us, myself included, are attached to our work or the outcome. Like, for example, I'd like this to be a nice little film. You know, I'd like for you to like it, but all I can truly do is do my very best, give my heart and soul to this talk on the Yamas and Niyamas, and then I need to let go. I need to let go. So this is a really good practice if you have attachment issues, which I think many people do. And as far as non-possessiveness is concerned, how are you with clutter? So I know for me, when I go into my creativity studio that other people might call an office, I just get a little bonkers when I see stacks of papers that haven't gotten put away. It just doesn't work for me. I really want, this is a good reminder, Megha, go home and clean that creativity studio to just lighten up. And that's a whole bit of what aparigraha is all about. Lighten up. We've completed the yama practices, and now we're about to move over to the niyamas, which are considered the observances, the character-building observances. But before we go into each one, I'd like to share another little excerpt from the Let Your Yoga Dance Teacher Training Manual. I think that before we move on, you should hear these words. As you choose one of these yamas or niyamas to practice, it's probable that the opposite will begin to manifest. When you shine a light into the darkness, you will inevitably see some cobwebs, scorpions, and toads. When you focus on satya, the practice of truth, you might be shocked to behold the number of untruths you tell. When you focus on ahimsa, nonviolence, and compassion, any hidden violence within you will be immediately evident. Worry not. This is a normal reaction from our very human selves. So note that the spiritual path has many pitfalls, and one being possible shaming of the practitioner. I'm a little passionate about this. As yoga teachers and Let Your Yoga Dance instructors, you probably have encountered wondrous tales of the many yogic accomplishments of great saints and masters. It's easy to fall into a pit of self-deprecation as you see yourself fall short of these high feats of spiritual brilliance. The yamas and niyamas are only roadmaps. They're not meant to show us how small we are. That's really, really important to remember. So these niyamas are very lovely. The first one is called Saucha, S-A-U-C-H-A, Saucha. Can you say that? Saucha. This is the practice of purity and cleanliness. Now, obviously, we need to take showers and baths and things like that. I love to live in water to purify the body. That's why Let Your Yoga Dance is such a fantastic practice, because we not only have the yoga and the meditation and the moving meditation, but we also get very rambunctious and we sweat. So we get to have an aerobic experience and working with the heart and really just letting the body go wild with movement, but we also come inside and get very quiet, and that's very purifying. As a teacher, I feel that it's very important to create a space of loveliness. As a student, I walk into a space and I have a response to whatever room I'm going into, even if I am not conscious of it. But if a room is messy, or if the teacher is looking a little slovenly, that has a conscious or unconscious effect. So practicing Saucha, practice of watching what I am presenting to the world. This can also mean, what am I reading? Am I addicted to the news? I don't think that's a great practice of Saucha, because the news can be so disturbing and frightening, and it makes our mind nutty. So oftentimes I need to back off and practice Saucha by fasting from watching the news, either on a screen or reading it. And speaking of reading, what is my reading material? I think it's really important to read inspirational things. Of course, I'll pick up some magazine sometimes while I'm waiting in line at a grocery store, but I want much of my reading, especially, to be poetry, because I can just feel my whole nervous system and my soul light up with excitement and inspiration around lovely reading material. All to say, Saucha is a great practice. Santosha, contentment. So many decades ago, when I first moved into the ashram and learned the Yamas and Niyamas, I too was told to choose one of the practices. And I said to myself, I'd like to choose the easiest one. Let's see, what's the easiest one? And when I looked at Santosha, I said, well, contentment. I'm pretty buoyant. I'm pretty cheerful. I'll choose that one. I think that's the easiest. Well, guess what happened? I realized very shortly that I was a raging malcontent, which is too bad. It was very sad for me to learn that. But as I was reading in the teacher training manual, it's because I was shining a flashlight onto everything inside me that was not content. And so you just need to take it all with a grain of salt and laugh at yourself, which I learned how to do in no uncertain terms. So, Santosha. Isn't that a beautiful word? Say that a few times. Santosh. You can say Santosha or you can say Santosh. It's a lovely thing to go through our life with an attitude of gratitude and contentment, even if times are tough. It's a practice. Yes, some people are born with happy genes, so it might make things a little easier for them, but having been in the positive psychology world now for 7 years, I realized that, if we want to create something, it needs work. And I still practice Santosha a lot and can think, okay, I'm really not pleased about that certain situation, but can I take a deep breath? Can I learn from it? And this world, this earth that we are living on, is a schoolroom. So what can I learn from that difficult situation? And how can I still breathe contentment and gratitude for what I do have, rather than complaint for what I don't have. And I'd like to bring in His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Isn't he a perfect example of contentment? I mean, Tibet, he lost his country. He had to escape from his country. And yet he still goes through his life with such joy and love. And if one human being can do that, we all can. So, Santosha, contentment. Tapas. Would you like to say that? Tapas. It does not mean, it's not a little thing to eat. It is a practice, one of the niyamas, and it means dedicated practice. Now, you might think, that's kind of boring, but actually you're practicing it all the time. Do you have children to raise? Do you have an animal that you need to feed? Do you have a music practice, or is there something that you need to do at work? For example, my trainees, I have trained thousands of people in holistic health educator training, Kripalu yoga teacher training, and now my own special Let Your Yoga Dance teacher training. And in order to become a Let Your Yoga Dance instructor, the trainee needs to practice tapas. There are certain things that have to happen to become a Let Your Yoga Dance instructor. Are you a gardener? You need to water the plants or they're not going to live and you're not going to have a garden. You know what I mean. I like to think of tapas as riverbanks. And my life is the water in the stream or the river, and it's flowing down, and it needs these riverbanks to keep me on track. If there are no riverbanks, what happens to the water? It's either a flood or eventually, I guess, it'll be a desert. So these riverbanks are the tapas. So if you are needing to create a goal, if you have a goal in mind, practice tapas and see what happens. Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya. This means self-observation, self-study. Swami Kripalu taught that the highest spiritual practice is self-observation with compassion. Now let's go back and remember the very first yama. Can you remember that? Ahimsa, ahimsa, which means compassion. So I always thought, if Swami Kripalu says that the highest spiritual practice is self-observation with compassion, then he really likes ahimsa and swadhyaya as practices. So think of this as, where is your mind at any given time? And going into class, going into Let Your Yoga Dance, going into a yoga class is a perfect opportunity to practice swadhyaya. What are you sensing around you? What's your mind saying? Sometimes if I'm in a yoga class and the posture's really difficult and I'm falling around, I might really judge myself. And that's an opportunity to go, oh, wait, I'm practicing swadhyaya right now. Self-observation, self-study. I don't want to be in my critic. I want my critic to go wash the dishes or make my bed, go away, and let me stand in this practice of observation and self-study. This swadhyaya practice is also about reading scripture. And we can talk about the ancient, great religious texts, but I like to also think of poetry like Shakespeare, Rumi, Hafiz, and of course my beloved Mary Oliver. So again, whatever lights you up. And I was talking before about reading material with Saucha, the cleanliness and purity practice. Well, same here. What really makes you sizzle with inspiration? And whatever that may be, then use that as part of your swadhyaya practice. Last but not least, the great kahuna, Ishvar Pranidhan. That is such a mouthful. Can you say that? Ishvara Pranidhan. This means surrender, not like the Wizard of Oz, not surrender, Dorothy. It's really surrendering to the divine, to the mystery. There's so many words for this. It could be God. Some people are allergic to the word God, so I always say then spell it backwards and you have dog. Surrendering to life itself. And many people say, oh, come on, that's way too difficult. I can't practice that. That's just too vast. And why would I even, try this? And other people go, well, why would I practice any of the other 9 yamas or niyamas when this one does it all? So it's totally up to you. And basically, if you want to think about how to do that in your life, you might be having a conversation with someone who really has a very strong idea and opinion about something. And instead of duking it out, you might go, well, maybe you're right. You might just surrender to the moment and see where you can go with it. Sadly, I feel that when I think of Ishvar Pranidhan, sometimes I think of New York City at 9/11 and what those amazing people did at that time. It was like they just reached their arms out like this and said, there's only one thing we can do, and that is have kindness. And that's interesting because the Dalai Lama always teaches that his religion is kindness. So it's a deep, deep surrender, a letting go. I know you've heard of the expression, let go and let God. That's what Ishvar Pranidhan is all about. You did it. You went through every single one of the yamas and niyamas, and now is the time to actually choose one. You might like to have paper and pen and writing board to take some journal time with the practice that you choose a little later on. I'm going to lead us in a meditation on each one of the practices, and hopefully that will spark some joy around which one you'd like to choose. But remember, you can choose one even for a few days. It doesn't have to be a very long time. Each one of these practices has something very unique and special to offer, and there's always another day to practice another one. So at this time, I'm going to invite you to find a comfortable seated position, preferably with a nice straight spine. So if you're sitting on the floor, I recommend a few cushions. If you're sitting in a chair, I recommend a cushion behind your back. And notice where your feet are planted. If you have a high chair, you need to have cushions beneath your feet so to bring the earth up for you. So with that, let your eyes close. Long, deep breaths. And we're going to return to the practice of ahimsa from the Yama character-building restraints. In this practice, we are cultivating compassion, understanding, patience, self-love, and kindness. You might create an affirmation for yourself. I do my best to be compassionate in my thinking, my speaking, my doing. The practice of satya, truth, the second yama. We cultivate here honesty, owning our feelings, having kind communication, not only with others, but with ourselves. Assertiveness, giving constructive feedback, forgiveness, non-judging, and letting go of our masks. Affirming, I am a truth seeker. I live in truth. My body never lies. It speaks the truth. The next yama is ashteya, non-stealing. The practice of not coveting, not being jealous, not stealing time, energy, or the world's resources. In ashteya, we cultivate a sense of completeness, self-sufficiency, affirming, I do my best to be honorable, not stealing time or energy from myself or others, and I take and use only what is rightfully mine. The next practice, Brahma Chharia, respect for energy, the practice of moderation. We release overindulgence of mind, intellect, speech, body. We cultivate moderation on all levels concerning work, sex, food, spiritual practice, the environment, all aspects of our daily life. And we affirm, I respect my own energy and the energy of the world around me. I am moderate in my lifestyle. The last yama, the practice of aparigraha, non-possessiveness, fulfilling our needs rather than our wants. And here we cultivate non-attachment to possessions and relationships. We affirm, I release over-attachment to other people, to substances, to achieving success in all my actions. It's fine to dream and make goals, but my intention is to try not to possess the goal. Take some breaths now as you complete your meditation on the yama practices, the restraints, controls, and we move now to meditate on the niyamas, the character-building observances. Saucha, purity, the practice of purity of body, cleanliness, good health habits. We cultivate purity of thought, discrimination. Let Your Yoga Dance is a physical expression of saucha. This form of yogic dancing cleanses not only the physical and mental body, but the emotional body as well. Affirming, I cultivate purity in my body by the practice of meditation, conscious eating, Let Your Yoga Dance, or any practice that really is healthful for body, mind, spirit. Now we move on to the practice of Santosha, contentment. The practice of accepting what is, making the best out of everything. We cultivate gratitude and joyfulness, remaining calm with success or failure. This state of mind does not depend on external status. Santosha, contentment. affirming, I am content. I'm grateful for what I have and for what I do not have. I learn from the joys and disappointments life brings me. Tapas, discipline. Dedicated practice. The practice of being willing to do what is necessary to reach a goal with discipline. Cultivating determination to pursue daily practices. Enthusiasm for the spiritual path. Affirming, I cultivate discipline. I have strong boundaries and I take good care of myself. I have a realistic, balanced schedule for my work, my spiritual practice, and my personal needs. I am disciplined, but I am also relaxed. Swadhyaya, self-observation, self-study. Cultivating the reading and reflecting on scriptures, meditation, wanting to know the truth. Remembering Swami Kripalu's saying, the highest spiritual practice is self-observation with compassion. Affirming, I practice conscious awareness throughout the day. I study scripture through reading and listening to brilliant teachings. I study inspirational words. I expand my self-knowledge and reflect upon my life with acceptance. Lastly, breathe into the final niyama, Ishvar Pranidhan, surrendering to the divine. This is the practice of true letting go. The expression, may my will align with spirit, defines this practice. Cultivating faith, dedication, sincerity, and patience to transcend rather than kill the ego. Transcend. We do need an ego in order to be able to teach, to be a leader, but we also can let go. I surrender my ego, my false pride, to life itself. I release the need for being the doer. A wonderful repeated phrase that really encompasses what Ishvar Pranidhan is all about is the mantra that Swami Kripalu brought to Kripalu decades ago. And that mantra is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And it means, may my will align with spirit. And that is Ishvar Pranidhan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Feel free now to stay in meditation as long as you wish. Hopefully you have found one practice that is inspiring you to play with it, work with it, write about it, dance with it, move with it. And may these yamas and niyamas serve you as a great roadmap to your life in spirit, in mind and body. Namaste.